Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel. Today I thought that we would have a look at my reading stats for 2022. So we're gonna go through how many books I read, how many pages, percentages, fun statistics, all of that. We're also gonna reflect a bit on the goals I set up for myself for 2022. 1 year ago I made a goal video for 2022. I'm gonna see if I actually hit those goals or not. But we're gonna start with the stats. Please let me know how you did in 2022, if you're happy with your reading. Let's now get started. I track all my reading in a reading log. I use the one from Book Riot and then I add some features myself. But the main template is from Book Riot. Every year they release an updated version of their spreadsheet. That's one I use. But first we're gonna look at the Goodreads stats because most of us have them and they're quite fun to look at. In 2022 I read 79 books which summarize to 23,462 pages, excluding DNFs. I don't count books I have DNF'd. And I've actually DNF'd a few books in 2022. I haven't really kept stats of it, so I don't know how many. I don't think I will start tracking my DNFs either, but I did DNF a few books in 2022 and I felt pretty alright about it, so that is good, I guess. Shortest book was And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Fredrik Backman at 86 pages, and longest book was the other Fredrik Backman book I read, which is The Winners at 712 pages. I think it's quite funny that both my shortest and longest books were by the same author. Average book length is 296 pages. I believe this is quite a decline or whatever from previous years. Last year my average was 352 pages and I do think I'm generally around 350 pages per book. I think it is because I'm reading more literary fiction, less fantasy. It's not that I'm reading less fantasy, but I'm reading more literary fiction and many of those books might be shorter, maybe. I also read a few graphic novels in 2022, which I haven't really done before, and those are about 100 pages. So I guess I am reading shorter books, not intentionally, but I do feel like I've been getting more scared and intimidated by chunkier books. So hopefully that's something we can redeem in 2023. Yeah, same thing for 2020. 377 pages per book even. So like I've been going down with my page count. I prefer a longer page count. It's very comfortable and convenient with books around 300 pages. And I have appreciated them, especially when I've been in reading slumps. But I miss reading chunky books. We're gonna get to that. I'm gonna redeem that. Most shelved book is The Great Gatsby. This book is almost shelved 6,800,000 times. Least shelved is Enough. This is a book written by my friend Kevin. Check him out, he is great, I will link him. Average rating 3.6, I think it was the same last year. I'm typically around 3.4 to 3.6. Highest rated on Goodreads is once again Kevin's book, Enough. My first read was The Rage of Dragons, and my last read was Woman Eating. Cool! Let's get to the actual stats now. So once again, as I said, I read 79 books in 2022. I did hit my Goodreads goal, which was to read 75 books, so I did do that, very happy with that. 2022 definitely, I started to get more into my new job, or it's no longer new, I've been there for over a year now, 1 year and 4 months or something like that, but by the end of last year I was still like new to my job. Now I'm gaining more responsibility, I'm doing more difficult things, it requires a bit more time and effort. I feel like I've been busy in 2022. Like I've had more of a social life because we don't really have COVID restrictions, I guess. Also I've been more adult with my apartment and stuff. Like there are many reasons why my reading in number of books went down last year, and they all make sense. And they don't bother me at all. I'm making things way more complicated than it should be. First, let's look at fiction versus non-fiction. You might know that one of my goals for this year is actually to read more non-fiction. In 2022, I read about 10% of non-fiction. 8 of the books I read in 2022 were non-fictions. I feel like I'm getting more into memoirs and similar, so hopefully I will be able to beat that in 2022. That's one of the goals. If you look at audience, majority of the books I read were targeted towards adult, only 14% were YA, and then we have 1% for children's and middle grade. I don't really read YA anymore. I think this pattern of me reading more and more adult will stick around. As I get older and experience more things, I start to relate more to people in a similar age, I guess, and I'm more intrigued by characters and stories in similar situations to my own, which is also why I think I'm getting more into literary fiction. I think 2022 was the year when I started to feel like a proper adult. In some ways, I still don't really feel like an adult. I'm still the youngest, and like amongst all of my social groups, like at work I'm the youngest, with my friends I'm the youngest, like I'm always the youngest. But I feel like in 2022, that's when I actually started to feel like I was adulting. Making adult decisions, being an adult. There's some sort of correlation between me reading more adult books and being more of an adult, I guess. I still have YAs on my shelves. I still will read them occasionally, and perhaps even some middle grades, but this pattern is gonna stick, I know it. Format, 53% of the books I read were print, 12% digital, and then 34% audio. I always say that I want the majority of my reading to be text reading, so physical and digital combined, at least over 50%, and definitely did it this year as well. I'm very happy with that, but I'm still very much appreciating my Scribd subscription. I think it's great. I have access to so many audiobooks. I mentioned I read a bit more manga and graphic novels this year. I even read poetry apparently. Did I? Genre. Okay, this one is interesting because I feel like there has been 3 genres battling each other this year. The usual suspects: fantasy, romance, and general fiction. In general fiction, we include literary fiction, contemporaries, general fiction, I guess. Throughout the year, I have actually been a bit curious which genre would come out as the winner. Apparently, I'm still very much a fantasy girl. 20.5% of the books I read were fantasies. We then have romance on second place with 19.2%, and then general fiction at a 17.9%. So not as even as I expected it to be. I do think fantasy is once again my most read genre, and it makes sense. Although I feel like the fantasy books I've been reading this year haven't really been those epic fantasies. It's been more of books with fantasy elements in them or fantastical elements in them that might not be that on the nose type of fantasy that I've read previously. My 4th most read genre is actually horror. I mentioned this in my awards video. Horror is like a new genre for me. I haven't really read much horror before, but I've been dipping my toes into it, dabbling with horror, and I've really been enjoying it. I haven't really read those typical, classical, scary, gory types of horrors. I've read more of those subtle horrors, I would say, or books with horror elements. And it's possible that some of the books I read, many of you probably wouldn't even categorize them as horror. And with those, we have like Warm Bodies, because I mean, it's zombies apocalypse, they are a bit gory, but also like Bunny and like Woman Eating. Like, I feel like there are books that you wouldn't say are horror, but because of elements in those books, they sort of fit into the horror genre. It's complex. Subgenres are very difficult. I've been reading more horror, and I'm actually very excited to continue to explore horror in 2023. Publishing date. Majority of the books I read were from my backlist, and then about a quarter was published this year. How many books did I read that were published this year? Okay, 22 books. I did pretty well with that one actually. So I read 22 books that were published in 2022. Nice. Best reading month was February, very much because of my own readathon, where I read 9 books for that readathon and then some more. Worst reading month was March and June, aka slumpish months. Although September was a pretty slumpy month as well. I feel like I was pretty good with ratings this year. I gave 10 5 stars, and I think 6 4.5 stars. And actually, if you look on Goodreads, I think it summarizes to 16 books that I've given 5 stars. Author gender, majority, once again, as always, of the books I read are written by females. I don't mind this at all. I have no desire to keep it 50-50. I will gladly have a majority of female authors. If there's one thing I would change is increasing the number of non-binary authors and others. Other than that, I'm fine with it. Nation of origin, I did a count, and I think I read books from 16 countries this year, which I think is an increase from previous years. It's still not great, and the majority of the books are still somehow related to the US, which is to be expected, but it's a bit annoying as well. The countries I read from this year were US, Canada, UK, Australia, China, France, Ireland, Japan, Nigeria, Iraq, Spain, Brazil, Sweden, Argentina, Lebanon, and Indonesia. I usually base this on if the author has lived a significant amount of time in that country. So in many cases, authors were born in a country, but then they moved when they were like 2 or 3, and they have grown up in the States or something. I don't really have a set system to this. I don't always count books by those authors to that nation, I guess. But if the author lived there until their teens or something, I think I'm more likely to consider that book to stem from that nation. I have no way of making sense of this. I'm just trying to make it into a way that will make sense for me. These ones I know because I've already checked. I haven't done as well with the relationship between POC authors and white authors. 75% of the books I read were written by white authors in 2022. This is bad because last year I was this close to a 50-50, like an equal 50-50 to white authors and POC authors. And I really thought, or had the intention at least, at the start of the year, to pass that 50-50 for POC authors. Obviously, I majorly failed with that one, and hopefully it's something I can redeem this year. Similarly with queer authors, about 20% or something like that. Once again, it perhaps has to do with how this spread is set up, but it's very difficult to tell an author's sexual orientation and like their identity because they are not always out. It's not always public information unless that author mentions it in their book, in like the acknowledgements or author notes, or like have it on their website or something or whatever. You don't really know the sexual orientation and identity of an author, and it's not something I'm gonna try and dig into because it's not really my matter. Like, I put it down when I know. If I have that knowledge, I will add it, but I won't really like deep dive into it. For the queer protagonists, I focus on the protagonist. In many cases, there is a queer relationship, but like for one of the side characters, I don't track that. I focus on the main characters, the protagonists, because I feel like it's sometimes such a cop-out to have queer side characters and not having the main characters be queer. Even though there is LGBTQIA plus representation in a book, if it's not for the main characters, I won't really track it. Does that make sense? Perhaps I should just add a column that is like LGBTQIA plus rep and check that off, no matter if it's the author or any character or something. I might do that, see what the difference is. I'm gonna add that, just to see. We have books in translation. About 9% of the books I read were translated. Once again, this is mainly because of my Olympics-a-thon readathon, where there is actually like a prompt to read translated books. I will work on that this year as well. Disability rep, about 15%. I think it's the first time I've tracked it, so I don't really have anything to compare to. Trans author, 2 trans authors, and 1 trans protagonist. I don't know what to make of that. We can then also just have a quick look at the books I've acquired this year, how many, and how big of a percentage of them I've actually read. So acquired books includes books I purchased myself, it includes my Illumicrate books, it includes gifted books, and apparently this year I have acquired a total of 73 new books, and out of those 73 books I read 23.3%, which is 17. I know I'm not doing the best with this, possibly in 2023, I don't know what to say, I can't really defend this. So that is like the general overview of my stats. I also watched my goals video from last year and wrote them down. So now we're gonna go through the goals I had for the year and see, like, compare the results if I actually hit those goals or not. So my goals for 2022 were to read at least 75 books. I did make that. I did hit that goal. To halve my physical TBR. That didn't happen. We all know I'm rolling that into this new year as well. I will be making my entire physical TBR video. I wanted to read more POC, queer and diverse books. This is where I drastically failed. Last year, 45.6% of my authors were POC authors. This year I was like at 20 or something, like a quarter. It's awful, it sucks. I'm gonna do better this year, I promise. Queer protagonist from 2021 was 22.3%, and this year I was at 20.25, so similar but once again worse. And translated books, previous time I was at 5.8%. This year I have upped it to those almost 9%. So slightly better. Not amazing, but slightly better. Another goal was to read books from more nations. So last time I had read books from 12 nations. This year, or in 2022, I ended up visiting, I guess, 16 nations. So better getting there. I wanted to read more 5 stars. I wanted it to be closer to 20. As I said, on Goodreads, I have given 16 5 stars in 2022, which I definitely think is an increase from last year, or from 2021. I believe in 2021, even though I read over 100 books, I only had about 10 5 stars. So I do think that's a good sign, at least, that I'm getting more 5 stars. I also wanted to up my NetGalley ratio in 2022. I actually dropped it from 23 to 21%, and I'm no longer really reading ARCs. I have been trying to focus on my physical TBR this year. I haven't been reading that much digitally, even though I have a Kobo. I will work on that. I'm done requesting ARCs that I'm not gonna read, so I haven't really been using NetGalley at all. Some challenges I was doing, or was hoping to do in 2022. I wanted to do the A to C challenge, where you basically find a book that matched each letter in the alphabet. I started this one, I have it in my journal, but I haven't really updated it, I think. I think I did fairly good. I must have gotten at least half of the letters, but I haven't been keeping up with that. I wanted to journal more and also make like book reviews and book spreads in my journal. And the thing is, I kind of stopped journaling in 2022. So I started the year journaling and like making spreads and making things pretty. How should I say this? I fluctuate? Is that a word? I fluctuate between physical writing, planning, journaling, and digital writing, planning, journaling. And I've been very much in my digital era. Like, I've been setting up Notion pages. And because I'm constantly on my phone or I'm constantly by a computer, it just makes sense to have most things at one place or easily accessible and not bring around this notebook and then a bunch of like materials and stuff. And like, I love the process of journaling, but it just hasn't been something I've been able to or have wanted to prioritize in the year that was. So instead I started to find ways to journal and bullet journal and write and keep track of things digitally, and it has actually been working out quite well for me. So that's something I'm gonna stick to. I want to start writing morning pages though, but that's something different. 22 books in 2022. I scrapped this one. I considered doing a video where I reacted to that list. I'm not gonna, it's just gonna be an epic fail. So, scratching that one, and I'm not doing a 23 books in 2023. I don't want too many year-long challenges. I have a few. I'm doing Buzzwordathon. I want to read more non-fiction, like one a month. And actually yesterday the Globetrotter year-long challenge was announced that I will do, but I don't want those massive lists to follow me for the rest of the year, because obviously it didn't work. So why would I make another video like that if I didn't read those 22 books of last year? Doesn't make sense to me. Also, Goodreads reading challenge, scrapping that one. I did keep up with it for like the first half of the year, and I am very thankful to it, because it actually, like, a lot of the books I read were 4 or 5 stars. But once again, throughout, I feel like my life has just been so different the second half of the year. So I haven't been keeping up with that. I haven't even looked at my journal. It's been a different mindset. I will not be doing the Goodreads reading challenge this year. Basically, the Goodreads reading challenge for me is I try to read the winners and some of the nominees from Goodreads Choice Awards of previous year. So like, if I were to do it now, I would do it for the 2022 winners. Then we have Bookstagram. I think I tried Bookstagram at like 2 occasions. One at the start of the year and one like in fall. Didn't go well. If I'm gonna do Bookstagram, I'm gonna do it very, very casual. But I just don't remember to take photos. That's the thing. And I'm not really that aesthetic and artistic and like can set up a perfect flat lay and stuff. Like, I'm not that person. If I'm gonna do a Bookstagram, it's gonna be messy. I like taking photos and editing them and writing a caption to them, but I cannot be bothered with like all of the other things that comes with that, I guess. It's enough just keeping up with BookTube. How am I gonna do Bookstagram as well? I have no clue. Another goal was to make at least one TikTok. Didn't happen. Scratched that pretty early on, although I have considered to look more into short form content. I definitely prefer long form content, especially on YouTube, but we all know YouTube Shorts. So it will be fun, perhaps at some point throughout 2023, to try and make a short video, a short form content sort of video, not a TikTok. I don't think I will be making TikToks, but basically shorts, Instagram reels, they are basically TikToks, but just for boomers. And then I think final goal was to make 5 book review videos, meaning videos where I review one single book and like sit down where I discuss themes and stuff. I did that for one book. One single book I did that for in 2022. I feel like reading a book, knowing that I'm gonna review it for a video, makes me read the book in a different way that I really enjoy. It makes me reflect on the book a bit more. And I do think those types of videos are definitely very much appreciated. And they do last as well. Like some of those review videos of mine, especially the one for She Who Became the Sun, is still getting views, which I think is really interesting. So I do want to make more book review videos. But basically, yeah, massive fail with most of my goals, except for the number of books I wanted to read. I have already posted my main goals for 2023. I will link it. I'm trying to be nicer to myself in 2023. I want to be able to focus more on like specific books and specific challenges. And I also want to allow myself to mood read more, have more time and space for like themed videos and vlogs and stuff. It will be a balance, but I think it's gonna work because last year I feel like I just wanted to go above and beyond in everything I did. And I need to, overall in life, I need to be more specific with where my energy goes, I guess. I do think that is it. I feel like I have blabbered enough. Please let me know how you did in 2022. I would love to hear about it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed. Please take care and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.
You gotta just go for it. Don't think about what comes